Good morning. Thank you for joining us for day 4 of the New York State Craft Brewers Conference presented by DWS. Today is actually presented by, who's our presenter today? Hopsteiner. And this session is called Mental Health First Aid. We have 2 professionals with Compeer Buffalo. We have Cheri Alvarez and we have Katie Walsh here to talk with us. And we're super excited. They came as a referral through Ethan Cox at Community Beer Works, who I see is also on the call. And they're gonna run through a presentation for everybody. Save your questions until the end for the most part, but feel free to put them in chat so that we recognize and can get to them after the presentation. And I don't think I have anything else to add. So I'm just gonna turn it over to Katie to start her presentation here on mental health first aid for breweries.
Thank you. Can everyone see our PowerPoint here?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay.
Oh, I should mention, if you haven't already, please make sure your microphones are on mute.
So, hello, thank you for attending our workshop today. We'll just do a quick introduction of ourselves. My name is Cheri Alvarez. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for Compeer Buffalo and Compure International. And I've been here for a little over 4 years. For 25 years, I have worked in the nonprofit world in Buffalo, New York. And I have a master's in mental health counseling.
And I'm Katie Walsh. I'm the Director of Mental Health Education at Compeer Buffalo. I've been with them a little over 3 years. I graduated with my master's in social work. And this was pretty much, I like to tune out my first job a little bit for the first couple of months. So this is pretty much my first job out of college, and I've loved it ever since.
Okay, so a couple things we just wanted to go over as we get started. One is when we say arrive, one, we want to thank you for choosing to be here. But 2, it's a really challenging topic sometimes. It can be a dark topic. You'll see that we try to add in some light layers into the conversation, but do your best to be present. I know you've probably had long days on Zoom and being conference calls and catching up work in between, but as much as you can be, being present will really help you absorb the material to the best of your ability. Use the chat, as was mentioned earlier. Feel free to throw questions in there, comments. Again, we'll have time for questions at the end. And I also add in the comment about hide the chat. If you feel that that's distracting for you, feel free to hide it. Open it up when you want to later on. You don't have to be looking at it during the whole conference. We will let you know when we are using the chat actively during the actual workshop. We welcome the questions at the end. We can't wait to hear any questions. But if you don't feel like you want to ask a question at the end or you think of it later on, don't hesitate to reach out to us. Our contact information will be at the end. We really look forward to hearing from folks. Even if it's a week or 2 after and something pops in your head, just don't hesitate to reach out. We're here for that. And we welcome that conversation. So we are going to start with a quick question using the chat. On a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being, what the heck is self-care? I don't even know. And 10 being, self-care is my middle name. Self-care is my jam. I've got this. How would you rate your own self-care? So just use the chat, throw a number in there. I see 1 and 5, 4, 5, great. 7, awesome. 3, 6, 4, 7. Okay, we've got a good range of folks who, and I suck. I appreciate the honesty, off the charts. So does anyone want to share why they may be rated where they rated themselves? And you can do that using unmuting yourself. You don't have to type it. Okay.
Ethan raised his hand.
I raised my hand.
Sorry, go ahead.
I've been giving a lot of attention to sleep and sleep quality. You know, my kids are now 14 and 11, so they sleep through the night. Actually, they don't. But it's not like babies anymore, right? Like, there's no good excuse for not having good sleep habits anymore. There are a few good excuses, like I'm older now and the bladder thing, right? I mean, it's not, can't have beer before bed anymore if I want to sleep through the night, which is embarrassing, but just the way things go. But, you know, like giving more thought to regular schedule and getting enough hours of sleep has been a priority for me, because I understand very deeply how sleep undergirds all kinds of aspects of emotional and mental health and literally cognition. So that kind of thing.
So you earned your 7, which is great. And I would imagine that in your industry, sometimes sleep is actually difficult during the night, you know, being up late and whatnot.
It's actually been a benefit of the pandemic. There are some for our industry. My liver's happier than it would be in an average year. And yes, my ability to get good sleep has absolutely been somewhat predicated on not having these events and, you know, drinking as often and as much, and staying out as late. This is true.
Great. Well, thank you for sharing. We're actually going to go over some self-care tips at the end of the presentation. So hopefully if you had a lower number and you, especially if you're Chris, and you want to perhaps have some ideas to leave here with, you'll get those at the end. So thank you for sharing your information. So what we're going to do is we're going to give you a brief overview, Mental Health 101. Some things might be familiar to you, some things may not be. Quick introduction to Compure, just so you know where we're coming from and what we do in our community, as well as throughout the state and internationally. So you guys are all from areas of New York State, and we have several locations within New York State. And then we'll give you the overview of mental health first aid, dive deeper into what that looks like, what opportunities exist for you to attend a training, and what you would walk away from the training with. So mental health versus mental illness. And I think it's important for people to identify the fact that mental health, we all have that, right? So we're all on a different spectrum with mental health. So at some point you may wake up and you're having a great day, things are going really well. It's a good mental health day. You're feeling really positive, you're engaged, you're confident. And other days you may wake up and just feeling off, like this isn't my day, you know, I got a parking ticket right in the beginning, like your whole day is just thrown off, it's not going well, you're just not feeling good energy. And those are just mental health general days, right? Highs and lows. But mental health or mental illness is when it's actually affecting your function on a given day. Maybe you really just can't get out of bed, like you're not getting out of bed several days in a row, or you're not able to perform your job, or your relationships are really down. So when it starts really affecting your day-to-day living, that's when it becomes more of a mental illness. But the reality is we all have mental health. And I think it's really important for people to recognize that, similar to physical health. We all have physical health on a different spectrum here or there. But we really focus on this because stigma plays a big role with mental illness. And we're getting better with stigma, identifying it and addressing it. But we have a long ways to go as it relates to stigma. It's preventing people from getting the help that they need, which we'll talk about a little bit later. It's contributing to people feeling really negative about themselves, like something's wrong with me. But the reality is that mental illness does not discriminate. It does not matter how much money you make, what your race is, what your age is. It's affecting a wide range of people. And it's not something that is always within our ability to control. So we think it's important to really differentiate between mental health and mental illness and really help break down the stigma of mental illness. So we're going to ask you to use your chat again, and we're going to ask a couple of questions. So the first question we are going to throw out to you is, what is the statistic of someone living with a mental illness in their lifetime? So in the chat, if you can just put what you think your answer is, there's no obligation to participate. This is a friendly atmosphere. If you don't feel comfortable participating, that's okay too. So
You want a percentage of the general population?
we're looking more for, like, is it 9 out of 10 people? Is it 5 out of 10 people? 60%, 4 out of 10, 8 out of 10, 1 in 5, 7 out of 10. Yeah, these are great answers. And I think someone may have done their homework, because the answer is 1 in 5. So 1 in 5 people will live with a mental illness in their lifetime. And so sometimes when we actually do these workshops, we have, 1 in 5 stand up in a full room to really give you the idea of how many people around us are really being impacted by mental illness. And if it's not you, it's someone that you know right now is being impacted by mental illness. And there are so many ways that you can help, which is really what we're going to talk about later today.
And I'll say too that the 1 in 5 is an evidence-based, research backed up statistic, but that's obviously what's reported, and what is reported as in people getting treatment and people that have been diagnosed. So in theory, we could say that it actually could be fewer, because we know that there's people out there that don't report that they're having symptoms or don't even know that they're having symptoms.
Yeah, and Chris makes a good point. Like, what does it say about us that we all guess so high, up to 80%, when it's really 20%? That's a great point. I think some of it comes down to the actual definition. I think some of it comes down to what Katie's saying. The number is likely higher. It's just not the actual recorded diagnosis. So it speaks to stigma, people not getting the help. Okay, Katie, go ahead. What is the most common mental illness people experience? Bipolar, anxiety, depression, anxiety, yep, okay. Anxiety, good number of you already have that on. And anxiety disorders is a category, so it includes a lot of different disorders within that category. But yes, that is the most common mental illness. And I think, how many times have you heard people say, oh, I'm experiencing so much anxiety right now, or I have so much anxiety about giving this presentation. And so yes, that is a feeling. You are anxious, you have that feeling, but keeping in mind that is someone's diagnosis that they're living with and battling, and it can truly challenge them in their everyday lives. Next question is, what is the average time someone takes between the onset of mental health symptoms and seeking treatment? So I myself may be experiencing something, I know something's off in my mental health, I'm not doing well. What is the average time that a person would seek treatment feeling that way? 3 years, 1 year. Okay. 4 months. 10 years. 10 years someone is suffering before they get the help they need. And that, again, that stigma, it's cost, right? If you don't have health insurance and it's very expensive, even if you do have health insurance, and depending on what your coverage you have, the cost to get treatment. It's also comfortability. We find there's a lot of research out there about someone who is African-American who wants to go to someone who's also African-American and can relate to some of the challenges they might be having outside of their mental health concern. There's very low number of African-American counselors. So you might be a female wanting to see a female, or a male seeing a male, or whatever your preference is. You want to find that person that you're going to share your deepest, darkest concerns with and be very vulnerable with. So finding that person is challenging. So it's accessibility, it's affordability, it's the fear, it's the stigma, all playing into someone getting treatment. So as we address all these bigger systematic issues, we're helping people get to counseling, get the treatment that they need.
Yeah, and a part of our mental health first aid training, we talk a lot about this further, and we relate it back to physical health, where if you were to get into maybe a car accident, a bicycle accident, or you just, were rollerblading and fell down and maybe have hurt your arm or leg, and you don't know that it's necessarily broken, it kind of hurts, but maybe you'll go see help the next day or a couple hours later if you are feeling like it hurts. Can you imagine waiting 10 years to go get that arm fixed or even looked at when you have gotten into some type of accident. So it really puts into perspective of the differences in our society that we think physical and mental health have together, but they really are so much the same. And we're trying to break down that stigma so that we are seeing them and talking about them and seeking treatment and having conversations the same way that we would with physical health. Everyone's so shocked about that one.
Mm-hmm. What percentage of people who live with mental illness are or will become violent? I see 2, 11, very few. Good answers. Ethan doesn't want to tie into a number. A little competition.
Jason, including self-violence, no, we're going to say portraying violence onto others or communities or in general. All right, 4%.
4%. So again, another response to stigma, right? Typically people think it's a higher number that people are violent. So, in terms of fear and the stigma, and if you're mentally ill, you're going to harm me or harm somebody else, and that's scary. And so why would I want to approach you and help you? But the reality is it's a very small percent of people who are going to be violent.
Last one.
What percentage of people in the workforce experience depression? Half, 20, 20, 60.
All right. Price is Right rule.
70. 70% are experiencing depression in the workforce. Across all industries, yes. So continuing on that information and statistics about mental health. Some other points we want to make sure you're aware is that 35 million work hours are lost each year due to mental illness. And, I've heard several companies say to us before, well, we don't have the money to address this, or we don't have the money to support our employees as it relates to mental illness, or it's costly, and absolutely it is. We go back to that health insurance and what can you cover in your health insurance for mental health. But the reality is you can't afford not to address it. Given the number of people who are dealing with depression in your workforce, the number of people who are losing productivity days and they're absent from work or they're distracted, it's actually poor business to not be able to address this. It will affect your bottom line as a business owner. And even as a supervisor or an employee, it's going to affect the morale and it's going to affect relationships and people feeling good about where they work. When you feel good about where you work, you're more likely to actually be more productive and do more and want to help the company that you're working for. So one that really stands out a lot, I believe, is that loneliness is as bad for your health as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. I think we all know that smoking 15 cigarettes a day is bad for your health. But when we match that up with loneliness and isolation, that those are actually just as detrimental to your health as the smoking of cigarettes. It's very powerful. I think this is becoming very clear and evident now during COVID and how many people are isolated from their friends and from their family. How many people are dying from loneliness. We know that people are in the hospital. Prior to COVID, they were there and perhaps dying of loneliness, but now even more so because you can't have someone in the hospital with you. And imagine an older adult with no cell phone to be able to text or connect with family and friends, and they're dealing with COVID in the hospital alone. I do believe people have died from that loneliness, that played an extra layer of harm to their survival. So a couple other statistics you're more than welcome to read through, but again, just keeping in mind that 1 in 5, and as we go through this workshop and hearing about the importance of how many people are impacted and what you can do to support yourself and coworkers, friends, family, neighbors. So the quick introduction to Compeer. So yes, we are a mental health organization. We are international. We started in Rochester, New York. Our headquarters are now in Buffalo, New York. We're throughout New York State, and every location looks a little bit different, but they all have, at bare minimum, they have that one-to-one mentoring match where we're recruiting volunteers from the community to be friends with people who are living with a mental health diagnosis. So what that looks like is 4 hours a month, you're with your friend, you're maybe going to see a movie, you're going out for coffee. Again, you're decreasing that loneliness and isolation, and you're just being a friend. It does not take anybody with any special training, but our whole focus of our whole organization is about social relationships, reducing that loneliness, reducing the isolation, making people feel good about themselves, increasing their self-esteem. So we do that through the one-to-one mentoring match. We also do it through social activities. Again, just being engaged with others in a safe and accepting atmosphere. We do it in group mentoring, so where we have a group of folks coming together and they're working on a common curriculum. And then mental health education, and that's where the mental health first aid falls under. We're going to talk more in depth about the mental health first aid, but I think it's important I'm sorry, I'm being distracted by the chat. I'm going to turn the chat down. Katie, you're just going to let me know if there's anything I have to see. I almost want to just dive into all those things that are coming up. So Compure as a whole, like I said, not every location is going to offer mental health first aid. So if you are in an area of New York State and you're interested in mental health first aid, we can provide that virtually from our location. Not all of our locations actually provide it, but Compure Buffalo does. We have a video coming up next that I'm actually going to suggest, Katie, that we pause on the video, and if we have time at the end, we'll come back to it. It's a 6-minute video that gives you an overview of Compure. I know you all signed up for mental health first aid, and I just want to make sure we get to that content because I think that's the most important for you all. You can always check out our video on YouTube at your own time, but if we have time at the end, we'll come back to the actual Compure video.
We just have a quick question in the chat. It says, being a friend for 4 hours a month, is that enough to combat loneliness? How is loneliness defined?
Great question. So our program is actually an evidence-based program. So there was a study that did determine that the 4 hours a month for 1 year commitment did make a change in someone's mental health. So all of our folks that we serve have a mental health diagnosis, and we do a survey currently with our clients and with their mental health professional and with their volunteer to really observe the change in behavior or the impact of the program. And really the loneliness is all self-identified for this program right now. It is someone saying, I feel less lonely since I've been matched with my volunteer, or I feel less lonely when I attend an activity. So really it's their own identification. And we also use the UCLA Loneliness Scale survey, which is an evidence-based survey. So the importance of that is really, your loneliness is only determined by yourself. Like that is the factor of how you feel is really what's impacting your loneliness. You might be surrounded by 10 people in a household and people are like, how do you feel lonely? You can be surrounded by people and feel lonely. It's a feeling, and that's okay. So yes, that is enough. The 4 hours a month for 1 year is enough. I will say most of our volunteers do a little bit more. Sometimes they pick up the phone in between the contacts. Sometimes it is just phone contact, especially during COVID. So the study that was done did determine that it is enough to make a difference. So I've already talked mostly about this, but again, we're focusing on relationships at Compeer. We focus on we all have a basic human need for social connectedness. So again, I might be in a household with a couple other people, but if I don't feel connected to any of those people or feel like I have a strong relationship or I'm getting my needs met as a human being for that social relationship, that companionship, it's going to feel lonely and it's going to feel isolating. And that was what we are addressing overall, whether we're matching somebody with a volunteer or we are training somebody in mental health first aid, and that person's going to help support somebody in the community. It is really neat, I think, because our whole model is based on humans and what we can do for one another. So whether I'm going to be a volunteer for somebody or I'm going to attend this training so that I can help somebody that's in my life that I may know about now or I may encounter. It's the bare, simple concept of life that like humans can help one another and we can all make each other better off. It's not going to be buying anything necessarily. It's just human, simple connections. So Katie is going to go from here to talk more about the mental health first aid curriculum.
Thank you. Okay, so mental health first aid. First, I want to start off by saying that it is not our program. So it is not a Compeer created training. It actually was created by the National Council for Behavioral Health, and actually in Australia back in 2000, then it was initially created. The adult curriculum for mental health first aid was initially created 21 years ago in Australia. It has then since become a obviously national program where everywhere around the world is teaching this course the same exact way. So that information that is constantly being taught is being taught the same way with the same information, the same language to everywhere around the world. It came to the United States in 2008. So it did take a lot of time to get here after it was piloted in Australia. And then Compure didn't actually start doing this training until 2014. When it came to the United States, it really wasn't accepted in a sense because of stigma. I mean, we're talking over a decade ago now, and the way we talk about stigma and mental health now is a lot different than it was even when this course was created and even 10 years ago. So it has evolved, and then that's when Compure adapted that training into our programming. At first, we trained 80 people in one given year. 2014, we trained 80 people. We had one trainer. I believe we had one little grant to be able to provide this training to our communities. And since then, we have been able to train over 5,500 people since 2014, because it is now so desired in our communities and now really across the world, because it's virtually an option right now. And we have been able to train 5,500 people. Now, nationally, over 2 million people have been trained. So we do recognize we're a small fraction, but for Buffalo and Western New York, and in our community, 5,500 people is a really big success for us. This training is evidence-based. So every couple years it is updated with the most recent research studies regarding all of the information and the newest things that come out, different diagnostic criteria that has been updated, and different statistics. I mean, when we first started this training, opioids and substance use really wasn't so much of a conversation as it is now in our training. So it definitely has evolved, and it changes with the evidence and with time. The main purposes as why this training was created was really to decrease the stigma, was number one. An idea to have a training just like physical first aid, just like CPR, where you are trained in mental health as a basic form, so that if you play any role in anyone's life, if you're a parent, a caregiver, a sibling, an aunt, an uncle, a coworker, a neighbor, a friend, you know, whatever role that you play, you are able to recognize that someone might be struggling and be able to provide some type of practical help, even if you're not a professional. Where the course really focuses on, you're not going to leave the training, being able to diagnose mental health conditions and, you know, prescribe treatment and recommend medications and do all of these things, because there are professionals out there who have extensive training and licensing and all of that to do that. But what about all those times where people don't seek treatment, right? So we saw that the average length is 10-year delay, and even more so, only 60% of people don't seek treatment, only 40% do. So that's 60% of people out there that are not talking to those professionals, but could and are still struggling or find themselves in crisis. So this training really gives you the skills, the knowledge, the increased confidence to be able to recognize when someone is needing help and how to appropriately approach them, how to specifically say things that would be destigmatizing and very empathetic, but also very helpful and gets someone to the right path of help. The training consists of a lot of role modeling videos, a lot of group and scenario work. It's a very interactive training to allow you to apply the things that we are learning so that when you leave the training, you can feel a little bit better about talking to somebody about their mental health or even talking about your own mental health. You know, we have physical first aid, we have CPR, we have all of these different training courses to help people who are struggling physically or in some type of that capacity. But how many trainings are really out there that encompasses just talking about mental health and how to just start a conversation and how to appropriately find a resource for somebody? And that's exactly what this training does. We have certified instructors. So in order to be an instructor of this course, there is really no train the trainer opportunities. You really just have to go through National Council to become nationally certified trained. So all of the trainers that we have at Compeer have gone away. Back before COVID, we had a little vacation and we went to a different state around the country and was trained in a week. We stayed there for a week to get trained in this curriculum. So it is, the National Council really does their due diligence in maintaining fidelity and making sure that everyone, no matter where you come from, is leaving with the same material and knows how to instruct this course. So we do have certified instructors at Compeer that teach these trainings. Right now, we have a youth curriculum available and an adult curriculum available, and I'll go through the two curriculums in a moment. And then we have a teen curriculum available, which that one has not quite yet launched. When it launched was right before COVID and they did not make it virtual yet. So we're just kind of waiting, but that one is actually for teens in grades 10, 11, and 12 that have a specific curriculum to help their peers and to help themselves. So it's a little bit different from the traditional curriculums because it's more meant for those teenagers. So right now, what's going to be most important to probably you all is how you can get trained or how you can set trainings up. And so we just want to go through a little bit of the logistics in our current state right now. So right now, they did change everything to virtual. And you know, in some areas across the world, in-person trainings are still going on. So, but for our purposes, Compeer's purposes, we are training virtual right now. So just some of the requirements is we typically like to have 10 people as a minimum, and one training can effectively teach 30 people just because of the Zoom size and all of that and how interactive it is. They capped it at 30 people, which just means if you have more than 30 people, we have more trainings. It's really our pleasure to be able to have as many trainings and get this training out to as many people as possible. So we work within those parameters, but we schedule way more. The virtual does require, so it is an 8-hour training normally. And that still kind of holds true to virtual. It encompasses a lot of signs and symptoms of mental health challenges, how you can help. It has an action plan. It has resources and videos and scenarios, like I said, and that takes a bit to get through. So they have just made it 8 hours. And the unique part of virtual is you can do those first 2 hours as a self-paced pre-work that's required to do before you jump onto our Zoom call. And our Zoom session's scheduled for about 6.5 hours because that's incorporated with breaks and whatnot. So we do recognize that it is a long time to be on Zoom or to really even to be in person. A full day training of any kind in any fashion is long. But we find that the time is really necessary to be able to effectively give everything that we need to in the training and have you feeling confident when you leave. Right now, all materials are electronic. You get a manual, a really nice manual that has a lot of resources. You do get a certification for 3 years. So you'll be mental health first aiders and you'll be certified as one for 3 years until you need to recertify if you choose to do so. And that really is just to keep up with the evidence-based because every certification kind of has to have a renewal point, but also the new information comes out every about 3 to 4 years. So it's really nice to get that new updated info. And right now we only have youth or adult curriculums available virtually, like I mentioned. So that is what we are scheduling. So I mentioned the 2 curriculums and just want to briefly talk about kind of what they mean and what you would expect out of them. So the adult curriculum teaches you how to identify, understand, and respond to signs of mental illness and substance use disorders. The training gives you the skills you need to reach out and provide initial support to someone who may be developing a mental health or substance use problem and connect them to the appropriate care. That is the exact definition of the National Council of Behavioral Health for the adult curriculum. It's the exact same for the youth curriculum, except for the fact that that course specifically focuses on youth mental health and how you as an adult can help youth ages 6 to 18. So all of the content will be focused on youth, and all of the participants have to be an adult. So it's different from the teen. And oftentimes we get confused. A lot of us get confused with that. But youth curriculum, you still need to be an adult, 18 or up, to attend. It's just that the content and how we deliver the content is really focused on youth, because it is a bit different with their mental health. Typically too, it just depends on your area. I know we're talking to a wide variety of people today, and usually now we do that with virtual. So virtual obviously is that option. Blended is also an option where once Compure makes the decision to do in person, with some restrictions and whatnot, we can do blended, where people can do the 2-hour pre-work online, just like the virtual, but we can just do a shortened version in person and cut some breaks and whatnot. And then we also will be still providing eventually the in-person training for people that the virtual or the blended don't work for them, or they would rather have their group together for 1 full day training. And once we can do that, that is still an option. But that's what we have right now. And right now we're pretty much just doing virtual. What it covers. So I kind of talked about this a little bit, but this is again directly definition from the council. So you will learn some of the common signs and symptoms of mental health challenges. So you won't, and substance use challenges. So you won't need to know how to diagnose when you leave the training. We actually, like I said, that's not a goal of the training, but it's important to recognize some of those changes in behavior for people to be able to initially talk to them and provide help. So you will learn bits about some of the common mental health challenges and substance use challenges in a person. You also learn how to interact with a person in a mental health crisis. So we categorize, both trainings have different categories, non-crisis and crisis, and we work through both of them, because at any given point you can find yourself just, helping somebody out who is feeling maybe that they're experiencing some depression symptoms because they had a life-changing event and now this is how they're feeling. Or you might find somebody who is in maybe engaging in self-harm behavior, or is having a panic attack, an active panic attack, and that's a crisis and we need to help them during that time. So we go over both and how to help in the situation in both. They have expanded content on trauma, addiction, and self-care as well. So the youth curriculum has all of that too, except they have an extended content on the impact of social media and bullying. Along with what it covers, and really the bread and butter of the course, is the action plan called ALGE. And here it is. In the training, we go through each step, and that is really the foundation of the course. And we go through each step and how and what the steps are and what you do within each one and when's best to use them, things to keep in mind with each step. We watch videos on each step. We practice, so we get a scenario and we practice ALGE with our scenario in group. And so when you leave the training, ALGE is pretty much ingrained into your brain as the action plan to remember when you're in a situation and need to use mental health first aid. Just wanted to share some testimonials regarding this training. These are the ones, I mean, we have I would say about 100 now since we've been doing this training. We have people that reach out to us and share sometimes that they want to share that they use mental health first aid or that they had a great experience with it and they felt confident with it. We also, when you take a training with us at Compeer, you are then given a 6-month follow-up survey. So in 6 months following the training you take, we send out a survey with a bunch of questions so that we do a lot of data tracking and really analyzing that this training works in our communities, and that to show the impact for our grant funders, and really just to show the impact for our organization, because we have created mental health first aid as a program. And the responses that we get truly are overwhelming with how many people still use the training 6 months, 12 months, 3 years later. And we are able to record that. So some of these are from that. And some of these are from, we also send out a monthly newsletter after you have attended a training with us. I create the newsletter. It comes personally from me. And it is really just to keep you engaged as to what's new with Compure, what's new with mental health first aid, refreshers on how to help somebody with depression, or how to help somebody with an eating disorder or experiencing self-harm or thinking about suicide, and just a good comprehensive mental health newsletter that you'll all be a part of as a benefit from taking a training with Compure. So, you know, the one that sticks out to me, these are the ones that stick out to me the most. Shortly after taking the mental health first aid training, I witnessed someone experiencing a mental health crisis at a local coffee shop. I was able to share with the barista that there is a mental health hotline that should be called instead of the police. I'm not sure what ended up happening, but I was glad to be able to provide that information. And that's a part of our training too, right? That one resonated with me because sometimes even if you're trying to help somebody, you might not know the outcome. You might not know the person that you're helping. And had that individual not shared that, maybe the police would have come, or maybe a different resource or a different situation would have played out. And they might not have been in a good situation regardless. So for her to be able to provide that resource confidently to a stranger at a coffee shop to get that person that extra help is a direct result of some of the things that we teach in the training. This one stuck out to me too, especially with the pandemic. My friend was going through a breakup on top of losing his job during this pandemic. I spoke with him and was able to get him connected to a counselor, which helped tremendously. He had since got a new job and has accepted that his relationship is over. He is now just taking care of his own needs and looking forward to the future. So obviously this person was more close with this individual and was able to encourage and help connect them to a counselor when they were really going through a difficult time, and have been able to get out of that and in recovery of that. And lastly, I've made this a required training rather than a recommended training for my staff, since I have now attended it. And we love to hear that. You know, that our training is voluntary. It is not mandatory. And when we have groups and organizations and churches and schools reach out to us for training, and oftentimes if it's showcased as, hey, this is something that is available to you, check it out, there might not be as much of a commitment attached with that, right? And so since this individual came from, this comment actually came from a college and a group of student learning students, so for their internships. So now they have all their staff go through the training, as well as their students that are participating in internships before they start them. So, and it's required, they have to do that. And the response and the investment in the training when it's required is a little bit different, but it has a greater impact. Because then you get more people trained, you get the information out there, and people want to actually take the training when others recommend it. So this person has now since attended it and has been recommending it. And lastly, an overwhelming majority of people, 97% actually report on our surveys that they would recommend this training to others. And that's pretty consistent for the last 3 years that I have been there, and pretty much across the board since we started in 2014. This training is always really recommended by others nationally, definitely as well. For your purposes on just knowing if you are interested in a training or how you would attend one or how you would set one up for your group, because we are doing one virtually. So I will say that I'm working with Megan to schedule and create some dates in April that are going to be available to you and anyone that we're going to send it out to attend. We're just finalizing, so we don't have a deadline right now to formally give you in a time frame, but it will be in April. It'll be probably two half days training. We're going to split it up just because of the time commitment that it is. But more information to come with that very soon. So there will be one available for all of you to sign up or to share out to other people to sign up. But in general, how else we have trainings is we hold a youth curriculum and an adult curriculum training each month, free of charge. And that now, since it's been virtual, we have people coming from all over, but really it's just so that if you don't belong to an organization or a group that is scheduling a training, that you can still attend one with us. And then we do private training. So you may reach out to us or we outreach out to different places and we schedule a training for your specific group. And it's just your specific group that is attending. Again, all trainings at no cost. We have grant funding to be able to cover that. And then there's my contact information. So I'm the one that coordinates all the trainings. I do instruct the trainings as well with a couple other of my team members. But I would be the person that you contact to set that up. And I'm going to go ahead and skip this one as well and just have Cheri wrap up with self-care.
Thank you, Katie. So as we stated in the beginning and had you rate your self-care, feel free to grab any one of these self-care tips. I recently signed up for a new app on my phone and it actually sends me some self-care tips throughout the day, and I was able to schedule it for when I wanted it, as well as positive affirmations. So I try to do something myself different every month and then try to share that. I want to experience it first before I say, oh, did you try this? So feel free to try any of these. We try to keep them very simple. We challenge you to try to schedule one for yourself and then reflect back on how it went. And see if it went any better, kind of assess your situation and see how it's going. It's a commitment. So we just ask that you are committed to your self-care and that you just like when you go on a plane and they say, put your mask on before you put on one for a child. It's the same concept. You have to take care of yourself so that you are in a good position to help care for somebody else. If you're not caring for yourself, you're not gonna be any good for anybody else. So we just really emphasize that as much as possible. Just being mindful of the time, and I think our last slide is just our thank you to you all again for committing to be here. We know in the industry that you are in, you have people who find comfort in your setting. So they're coming to you because they enjoy relaxing and kind of in that process, sometimes they're releasing their struggles and their challenges and their sadness. And you guys are really in a difficult situation. We want to make sure that you have the tools to support that person, no matter what situation it might be in. And so we see mental health first aid as exactly that. It's a tool for you to feel more comfortable in responding to a situation you may find yourself in that you could not have anticipated happening. So thank you again for being here and for listening. And if you have any questions, we'd be happy to take them. I will respond. Go ahead.
No, just to reiterate what Katie said, the NYSBA is organizing a mental health first aid training in April for all of our members and support staff at your breweries. So stay tuned. We don't have the dates yet. We are working on 2 half days for the session as opposed to spending 1 8-hour day in front of your computer on Zoom. And that, as Katie also said, is completely at no cost to all of the NYSBA membership.
I just wanted to raise my hand and say thanks again. That was really, really informative, and I'm so glad that we were able to connect and what you all do. is something that I think is really important for our industry. And I think, you know, one of the things I suggested, that the reason why we thought some of those numbers were higher than they are is actually for a good reason, because I do think it is being talked about more than it ever used to be. So more and more people do actually know somebody, even if the number is actually only 1 in 5. More and more people know that 1 in 5 person, and it might seem to them like more. And it is getting discussed more, which is good, but might lead to an overestimate of how prevalent it is. Man, I was just thinking that for myself. The other point is, you know, when I think for a lot of us, you might not have thought about this, but when you got into this industry, outside of the mental health of your employees, you know, if you run a tap room, if you have a hospitality operation, any restaurateur and especially any bartender will tell you that you're on the front lines of mental health in almost the same way that a nurse might be on the front lines of a pandemic. You know, people go to third spaces, so not just bars, but also coffee shops and also hair salons and barber shops, you know, and it varies a little, but people go to those third spaces to avoid loneliness, right? And to connect, and in some cases to indulge in destructive behavior because of their state of mental health, but also sometimes to engage in very important behavior because of mental health. And maybe also giving off a sign, right? So it is weird. Like, that's not what we got into operating a hospitality operation for. We didn't consider that. But it turns out to
Ethan, I think you froze at the end. So I think we got 3/4 of what you had to say, which was awesome information, and thank you. We missed the very end.
right. Yeah, I'm having bandwidth issues today. I think it's because my kids are also doing their virtual school stuff, and they're sucking down bandwidth. Sorry.
That's fine. They're a priority. They got to get their education in.
No, but I think Ethan makes the point that breweries are not just, it's not just about the liquid, right? It's not just about the beer, it's about the environment. And for me personally, the reason why I work in this industry is because I always viewed craft beer as a conduit for a conversation, and conversations build community. And that's actually the theme of this year's conference, is community, because we at the NYSBA and the people that make up our community, we recognize that community is so important on kind of the micro level of the individual breweries, and then our industry as a whole. And it's because of the strength of our community as a whole that we have survived this pandemic. I'm not privileged enough to kind of filter it down and work on the exact brewery level like Ethan and Chris and other people on the call are. But the same thing applies. Is craft beer connects people, and that connection, to your overarching point, right? The idea of having conversations and friendship, how important even just 4 hours a month can be to somebody. You know, that's what you provide by being owners and operators of craft breweries.
Absolutely. And looking at Nikki's question in the chat, the mental health first aid training does respond not just to mental health, but to substance use as well. So I think that information is helpful. Nikki, if you want to send myself or Katie an email, we can also send you some additional information that might be helpful as it relates to substance use. I know locally, one of our largest substance use nonprofits spoke on the news this morning about the rise in opioid use and death. And although not a significant rise in suicide, which we did anticipate, but it's that loneliness, finding that finding that comfort in alcohol or liquor use or opioid use. And the rise in liquor sales through COVID. Those are all data pieces that we're looking at, and then how is it impacting individuals? So feel free to email us and we'll try to get you some additional industry specific information, but definitely being aware of how to approach somebody, I think, is the number one thing. We say that, if someone's having a heart attack, you kind of know what to do and you don't shy away. If they're choking, having a heart attack, but if they're having an anxiety attack, you're probably going to step back a little bit and be like, I just don't know what to do, and therefore ignore them. So I think the biggest thing you can do is get yourself familiar and comfortable with responding. Give yourself all the tools that you need to respond to your guests, your employees, whomever is in your world.
We have just 2 more minutes left of the session here. Does anyone have any other further questions or comments for Katie and Cheri?
Hey, I was trying to look online I've been bouncing back and forth. I was trying to find online specifically the first aid, mental health first aid for youth program that I might do online. Did I miss where I might be able to sign up for something like that?
You just go to our website. Sorry, Katie, go ahead.
No, that's okay.
If you go to our website, it has the link to the dates, so you can sign right up on our website. Did you check there?
Is it Compure Buffalo, or I drilled directly from Compure into mental health of the Southern Tier, and they said we don't have any classes.
Yes, so you went to our international focus first. So yes, compurebuffalo.org, and the link is in the chat. And on there, you will be able to sign up for our mental health first aid training using Eventbrite.
Sorry for the repeat. Thank you.
No, that's fine. And I'm glad you asked that question, because I'm sure someone else might have it too. And again, if you can't navigate our website, feel free to shoot us an email. We'll be happy to help you with that.
Thank you much for the presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks all for participating in our chats.
Yes, we appreciate you attending.
Mm-hmm.
Hope you have a good rest of your conference.
This session will be available on the NYSBA YouTube channel as well, so you can always share it with your team and watch it again. The next session we have coming up at 1 o'clock is Making Sense of Music Licensing, which is always a very interesting, somewhat maybe contentious topic, but very, very well presented by Dan Spears from BMI. So I encourage you to attend that session at 1 o'clock. We thank Cheri and Katie for your time and your expertise and being with us here today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, everyone. Take care. See you online.